what do you there? I've noticed there's a weird trend I've noticed with the Star Wars Ahsoka thing, where there's people that generally will speak about it. I'll watch reviews. I've watched yours. I've watched, we were on Open Bar. I've watched Gary's stuff about it. I've watched all these people's stuff about it. And I watched the first 2 episodes and I thought it was pretty unwatchable, to be fair. But there's like this legion of people that are obsessed with it and defending it. And I don't know if it has something to do with Anakin showing up in like full CG. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He looks very plasticky in this now.
So
I think it's people who are just desperate for something that's going to save Star Wars. Like every new TV show that comes out, it's like, this is the show that's going to save Star Wars. This is the one that's going to turn it around. And it never really does. And like, again, with Ahsoka, because we're in the midst of it right now, they're just pushing it so hard. They want to believe this show's going to fix Star Wars and prove that it can work. And I guarantee you, a month from now, nobody will remember it.
Yeah.
It'll come and go, just like every other show.
Just like every woman in my life. And like, what I don't understand, I feel like it's the Star Wars formula seems to be such an easy and winning formula, but you have all these like activist directors or writers that have to like somehow like put their mark on it and ruin everything. Like Filoni or any of the people that are involved, like Ryan Johnson, that son of a bitch. I swear, I was going to the airport, coming home from Houston, and I saw a guy on the sidewalk that looked just like Ryan Johnson, and I thought, just on the off chance that for some reason he's in Houston, I need to hit him with my car.
Yeah. It's like once I pummeled him to death, I realized it wasn't Ryan. But you know what? It was worth it just to do it anyway.
Yeah.
With the movies, you had that weird mixture of just cynical, talentless, soulless corporate hacks like J.J. Abrams, who were just out to do the safe thing that made as much money as possible. And then you had like ridiculous wannabe auteurs like Ryan Johnson, who just completely went into business for themselves and just told their own story. And fuck whatever came afterwards, because who cares? It's all about him.
Yeah.
And then in the TV show side of things, you've got guys like Jon Favreau, who I think wanted to tell a good story. Like he wanted to kick off something just back to basics, strip back, like a Western in space with The Mandalorian. Worked for a season or so, and then it got hijacked and just turned into like the launch pad for a million other shows. And then you got Dave Filoni, who really doesn't give a shit about anything apart from like bringing all his Rebels and Clone Wars characters into live action. It's just about, I think, ego stroking with him.
Yeah.
It's all about just validating those things that he's already made.
Yeah.
So you got this weird mix of just egos and incompetent morons, really. So it's not really the kind of crew of filmmakers that are going to save Star Wars or produce anything really memorable. It's just we're not living in that world anymore.
It reminds me of Witcher, where you had someone like Henry Cavill that was so, passionate about the source material, and he would pretty much fight every step of the way for the character, for the show. And that ended up them calling him toxic because he wouldn't, like he didn't want them to tell the story that they wanted to tell, which was dog shit. You know what I'm saying?
He was difficult apparently because he was pointing out all the stupid shit that they were doing and saying like, this doesn't make any sense with the books. It doesn't line up with anything that's there. How about we do something crazy like just follow the existing story that's way better than what you're making? And it's like for that, their egos just can't handle the fact that someone is telling them no or is questioning the awesomeness of the product that they've made because they've never heard no in their entire lives. That's the issue. Look what happened to him. Eventually he just said, screw it, I'm done. I can't work under these conditions anymore and I'm out. And I think he bailed out at the right time, really, because that show's on its last legs. There's no way Witcher's got a future.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about Star Wars, because every time I turn it on, no matter what the show is, no matter which iteration it is, what movie it is, I can already guess, which character is which, like their motivations, just by surface level things like their race or their appearance. Like for example, Star Wars Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan show or whatever. there was this episode. I was watching it because I love Ewan McGregor, and I was like, please, for the love of God, give me something that I will enjoy with Ewan McGregor in it. And there's this one specific point where I laughed out loud because Ewan McGregor is the Obi-Wan character is escaping with the little girl, and they get to this area where stormtroopers like swarm in, and I'm like, oh shit, stormtroopers, and they're basically fucked, right? So then there's this like leader, like commander Imperial lady that walks up, and she's like, leading this group of stormtroopers, and I'm like, oh shit, and I noticed that she's Indian, like she's like from India, very dark complected. And she was like this Imperial commander, and I was like, oh shit, this is weird. Like, shouldn't she be like a white dude or something? And I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of proud of Disney for like doing this. And not, I shit you not, 4 seconds later, she like pulls out her pistol and shoots the stormtroopers, and it turns out she was undercover this whole time, and she's a good person. And I literally laughed out loud. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe that. Like, I was like, oh wow, I can't believe they're not going to make a non-white person the evil. And of course it was completely like bait and switch, and I was like, damn. And you can do that with every single Netflix show that comes out, especially if it's on Disney. So you can almost tell the characters' motivations, or if they're going to be good, bad, or like what have you, depending on like stuff that's really surface level, like their race. It's wild.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is my alt channel, and my main channel is in danger every day of getting banned as a result of talking with these amazing people very candidly. So please do me a favor and subscribe down below. Helps me out a lot. Get the hell on it, doggone it.
I've said the same thing before. Yeah, it gets to the point where you can now predict how any scene's going to play out, just depending on the ethnicity or the gender of the characters in it. And like you say, they're never going to portray women in a bad light. They're never going to portray ethnic minorities in a bad light. They'll never portray LGBT people in a bad light, because those are like safe groups that you can't touch, even in a fictional world, and that's the point where you realize, well, there's nothing to do now from a storytelling point of view, because you've got no ability to keep the audience in suspense, because they know exactly what you're going to have to do. They know the rules that you're now following, and so it takes all the tension out of every scene. Not to mention the fact that it's just really slimy and cynical, and just a shit way of telling stories.
Yeah, and it's weird because, as would say, it just makes them boring. You're just boring at this point because. And we'll get into the Starfield thing, because that's a great segue, but it's just boring. All storytelling is completely boring now, because everything is so predictable, depending on like shit. If you had a show that was only white people, I would be confused. I would be like, I don't know how this is going to play out. You know what I'm saying? Yep. But you introduce one character, especially on Netflix or Disney, that is somehow a minority in any way, shape, or form, for a fact that character is going to either A, be redeemed or redeemable, or actually good-hearted the entire time, even if they killed everybody, like Reva, or B, they were good the entire time, all along.
Where it gets really weird is when the movie or the TV show wants you to believe that a character's good, but ultimately, like, everything that they're showing you makes them a horrible person.
Yeah.
The example might be Rachel Weisz's character in the Black Widow movie, where you got Ray, can't remember his name, the basically the villain of it, Dreykov. He's this horrible guy who controls all these young women and inducts them into the Black Widow program to brainwash them and turn them into assassins. He's horrible. He's the bad guy. She is his willing accomplice who did all of this of her own free will, and developed all the technology to do it. And even tortures animals and experiments on them in her spare time. And she's portrayed as like a likable, quirky, goofy sort of character who's funny and has a heart of gold at the end of it and redeems herself. Why? Because she's a woman. That's the ridiculousness. But it's like everything you're showing us about this character is the exact opposite. She's a horrible person, but we're not meant to question that. That's where it gets weird.
It's like Wanda. So Wanda imprisons all these people for a long period of time, and then she's just forgiven. And then she kills all the people later on, and then she's like forgiven because she decides at the very end of the next film, which wasn't even her film, but apparently it was her film. That she completely redeemed herself in like one act. I'm like, you still killed all those people. It's like it's for example, it's almost exactly like you take someone like Hitler and you're like, okay, he did all this atrocious shit, but then did one like kind act at the very end. And it's like, oh, he's fine. He's
Yeah, that's
fine.
like I guess that's like trying to equate two very different things, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's an odd way of framing morality. I think just it's almost like saying morality is subjective, depending on the innate characteristics of the people involved, and that's a dangerous road to go down, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's they did that with Reva from Obi-Wan. Reva. I think that was her character's
Reva,
name.
yeah.
I've already forgotten.
Reva, sorry.
Yeah. She, did all this atrocious shit, tortured all these people, killed all these people, and just at the very end, after getting stabbed by old Vader and living somehow, that, she's not going to kill Luke now. And
Yeah,
now
and
she's a
that
good
that
character.
makes her okay as a person.
Yeah.
Because yeah, man, like I've Muller and I've talked about this. Like we both fall into this camp of like if somehow Vader had lived through Return of the Jedi and survived, like he would absolutely have to stand trial for like war crimes and probably spend
Yeah.
the rest of his days in prison at least, because like that stuff that he did, okay, like he redeemed himself in the eyes of his son and stuff, but it doesn't erase all the horrible things he'd done for the past 20 years. People should answer for the crimes that they've committed, I guess. But Reva apparently doesn't have to.
Exactly. And why? Because she's a woman. Or, well, specifically because she's a minority woman. Like, she's fine now. It's totally great. And now every Jedi forever is just a woman. I'm tired of it. I won't Ray Stevenson should have been the main character. And then there was no women. Like,
I think it's obviously it's called Ahsoka, so it's
Yeah.
fine. Like she's the main character, but and you can have a show like exactly like this one where you've got Hera and you've got Sabine, like you've got 3 female leads. You can do it, but just at least make them interesting.
Yeah.
And give the actresses something to work with, because what you've given us is no, they're just a bunch of robots talking to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like the thing I've been saying for a long time. It's like, I don't really care what you put in a show, a movie, sexuality. I don't care about anybody's race. Just make their character good. Write their character well. And they have not done that in a long time.
Yeah.
Like a long ass time. And to be honest, I thought Kyle Katarn, if like I played the Star Wars like Jedi Knight and Jedi Academy games like religiously, and I naively thought that the new Star Wars was going to include Kyle Katarn, like back when Disney purchased it and stuff. And then I see this Rey character and Finn, and I'm like, I don't know who these characters are. And of course, we know how that went. But I feel like they had such a winning formula, and they just threw it all in the garbage, and it made me so sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of Disney to a T at the
Yep.
moment.
Yep.
They've got all these winning, or at least these really valuable IPs, and just slowly flushing them down the toilet, man.
Yeah, it's terrible.